October 3rd, 2025. South China Sea. In the heavy darkness, the sea lay silent, as if holding back a steel storm about to fall. And at exactly 3:15 a.m., it began. From the horizon, a colossal black mass gradually took shape, one of the most powerful task forces of the People's Liberation Army Navy. Leading it was the aircraft carrier Shandong, displacing 65,000 tons. Close behind were 6 Type 052D destroyers and 4 Zhongkai-class frigates. They moved in a tight formation, like a hunting pack silently circling its prey. The objective was unmistakable: the U.S. Freedom Rig, the largest offshore rig in Asia, 400 feet tall, over 120,000 tons. It was not just an energy installation, but a symbol of Washington's technological power and strategic will in the Pacific. Just 48 nautical miles away, a U.S. Marine unit was garrisoned, always ready to defend. But tonight, they would face an ambush like no other. At 3:27 a.m. The sky was suddenly slashed by bright red streaks. 10 long-range cruise missiles were launched simultaneously, racing toward the U.S. outpost. Behind them, 5 Y-9 electronic warfare aircraft streaked upward, unleashing massive jamming emissions, over 120 gigawatts, plunging the regional radar spectrum into a white sea. Immediately, U.S. radar began to blink abnormally. The early warning system, designed to track hundreds of targets at once, became a black screen. Then a louder roar followed. From low altitude, 10 JH-7 heavy bombers charged in, carrying a total of more than 40,000 pounds of bombs. On paper, everything was set for a perfect ambush. The value of these weapons? Nearly $500 million USD. At 3:29 a.m. In the Freedom Rig command room, the AN/SPY/6 radar array, the heart of the defense system, flared once and then went dead. The screen went pitch black. The U.S. outpost was suddenly completely blind. For 5-10 seconds, no one could breathe. Red alarm lights flashed, sirens wailed, but instead of panic, the commander, Colonel James Marston, a veteran of 2 decades of combat, sprang up, slammed his hand on the table and barked, "Switch to manual mode. Fight with your eyes." That order rang out, cutting through the chaos, and it changed the course of the battle. Immediately, U.S. teams raced onto the rig's roof. They carried thermal sights, laser rangefinders, and shoulder-fired Stinger missiles, simple weapons costing only $120,000. Compared with China's $20 million jamming system, they were tiny. But that night, those devices became the only hope. With no radar, the American troops had to rely on their own eyes and battlefield instinct. All they had trained for in thousands of hours of drills now became reality.
3:32 a.m. A blazing streak headed for the rig. Private Sanchez, 22, put his eye to the sight, estimated the trajectory, and squeezed the trigger. The Stinger screamed, struck the Chinese missile worth $2 million. A brilliant explosion lit the sky as if it had been torn apart. His comrades cheered, then immediately engaged the next target. Missile after missile fell. In the sky, points of light turned into fire bridges, then plunged into the sea. Within minutes, 9 out of 10 of China's cruise missiles had been shot down. 7 out of 10 JH-7s lost wings and became burning iron fragments, falling into the South China Sea. The Americans erected an invisible wall with their eyes and will, achieving an interception rate approaching 90%, a figure military experts would call impossible without radar. But the victory left scars. One missile slipped through, exploding less than 300 yards from the rig. The blast wave tore sandbags, shattered windows. 5 Marines were wounded, 2 badly burned, 3 suffered eardrum perforations. A sergeant permanently lost hearing in his right ear. The rig still stood, but everyone understood this was only the prelude to a nightmare. "4:02 a.m. News of the attack reached Washington in under an hour. At the Pentagon, red warning lights lit corridors. Command rooms were filled with frantic phone calls. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs reported directly to the president. Confirmed, the attack came from a Chinese fleet. The U.S. response was not deliberation. It was an order to retaliate immediately. The nuclear submarines USS Louisiana and USS Ohio, hiding in the Philippine Trench, received launch orders. 3 EA-18G Growlers, equipped with next-generation jamming pods, took off from Guam. On land, silos along the Pacific coast opened. 2 strategic ballistic missiles, each armed with a warhead yield equivalent to 500,000 pounds of TNT, were put on alert. No one in Washington thought about a limited response anymore. This was an overt act of war, and the reply would be a storm of fire. The ocean seemed to hold its breath. Then from the deep, thunderous detonations rolled out. 20 Tomahawk cruise missiles left the tubes of U.S. submarines, tearing through the water and streaking into the night sky. In the air, 3 EA-18G Growlers surged forward, emitting jamming waves covering a 400-mile radius, severing communications and control systems of the Chinese fleet. And from high above, a swarm of Iron Bees, more than 300 Switchblade and Phoenix Ghost UAVs, began to dive. Each small drone carried armor-piercing explosives, pre-programmed to strike radars, missile magazines, and gun turrets.
"4:36 a.m. The Chinese fleet immediately reacted. HQ-9 air defense systems launched in dense volleys, turning the sky into a forest of fire. Experimental laser cannons mounted on destroyers swept across, incinerating hundreds of UAVs. Within the first few minutes, more than 180 drones were shot down. Blackened wreckage rained into the sea like a storm of metal. But 120 drones still got through. They dived straight into the most critical targets: radar towers, CIWS systems, flight decks. A Type 052D destroyer was struck in its magazine, the explosion creating a fireball equivalent to 200 tons of TNT. The hull split open, burning fiercely in the night. Next came the blow from the U.S. Army. 2 ATAC-Ms missiles were launched from the Philippines. One veered off course, crashing into the sea. The other slammed into a Jiangkai frigate, ripping the vessel in half. Sailors jumped into the water amid a storm of fire, their screams echoing across the waves. Moments later, 4 Tomahawks pierced through the deck of the Shandong aircraft carrier, Beijing's pride. The flight deck erupted, 60,000 gallons of jet fuel igniting in a massive blaze. Over 30 J-15 fighters parked on deck went up like matches. The carrier's command and control system collapsed completely. At 4:55 a.m. The South China Sea glowed with towering pillars of fire. Once mighty Chinese warships had become twisted hulks. 2 destroyers sank, another burned, and the Shandong, the symbol of China's navy, blazed in the darkness. Thick black smoke rose hundreds of meters into the air, visible from fishing villages nearly 80 miles away. On the radios, chaotic distress calls crackled. "We've been hit! Fire across the deck, requesting immediate support!" But no support came. The Dragon Fleet's wings had been broken. By 5:10 a.m., the Dragon Fleet was shattered. 2 destroyers sunk, 1 heavily damaged. Shandong engulfed in flames. Black smoke towered into the sky, and burning oil slicks stretched nearly 9 square miles. In less than an hour, 1,200 Chinese sailors were dead, 2,000 wounded or missing, losses amounting to nearly $7 billion. At dawn, the South China Sea had become a graveyard of warships. The Pentagon declared, "The United States did not start this war, but if attacked, we will end it." That message reverberated across the Pacific. Beijing had gambled to humiliate Washington, but in return, suffered the greatest naval defeat since World War II. The battle proved technology can be blinded, radars can be jammed, but the will of men cannot be broken. 5 U.S. Marines were wounded, 1 permanently disabled, the price of sacrifice in defense of freedom. And as sunlight fell upon the wrecks, the world was left with one question. Was this the night that ended China's naval ambitions, or merely the beginning of a far greater storm?